I get Vach.
What's the Ernie? Do they have to have Ophos? Have to have a Goro? Well, the bottom line is, do we need a Goro by Ophos?
There's only a Goyro by the two goats.
No, but what about the Ophos? Is there a goal? Is there a I mean, there's Machok, but what do we feel? Do we need a Goro by the Ophos?
No, the only, you didn't need a Goyro for the par either.
Or seem to imply that you need Ophos too.
Stop. Stam sifri mani Rabbi Yehuda v'kotani hagoyrol oisachatis v'nashem oisachatis. That putting the goyrol is what creates which goat's going to be the chatis, and not declaring it. Alma, therefore you have to have hagrola ma'akva. Tiyufta demandom hagrola ma'akva tiyufta. So it's a kasha on the one who said that if you didn't do the goyrol, it was still okay. Rav Chizda. In the situations where you bring birds, so for example, when a woman gives birth, so she can bring two birds, one is a chatis, one is an ola. So what determines which bird is which? So you could determine it when you buy it, and you could say this one arezu chatis and this one arezu ola. Or you can buy them and not determine which one they are. And when the Kohen does the avoda with the birds, so there's a different way of processing the chatis bird versus the ola bird. So basiyos and Kohen, when the Kohen actually does it, that's what determines what it is. Rav Simi Barashi, my time in Rav Chizda, dichsiv v'lokcha v'osa, right? The pasuk talks about when you buy the bird. It says v'imlo simtza yado deiseh. If the woman doesn't have enough money to buy a sheep, v'lakcha shtei soirim o shnei vnei yonah, she shall buy two doves or two pigeons, echad la'ola ve'echad lachatas. And then later on it says v'asa osama kohen echad chatas v'echad oila. So we have two alternatives. The obalakicha when you buy it, obasiya when you do it. Meisvei, I'll ask you a kasha. It says vasal chatas by Yom Kippur when you have the two goats. Hagoyrel oisachatas vein Hashem oisachatas. It's not you declaring this goat shall be Hashem. It's the goyrol that says if it lands in your right hand and you put it on the head of the sawyer, that's what makes it the chatas. Shiyachol v'haloi dinu, and I might have thought differently. I might have learned a kavachomer. Uma b'makom shaloi kiddush hagoyrol. In all other korbanos, by a chatas, by an oila, by a shlomim, by a toida, by a whatever it is, there's no goyrol there. You have to declare harezu shlamim, harezu chatas. So in those cases where shalom kiddush hagoyrol, kiddush Hashem, so goyrol doesn't work yet. Your words work. Makom shekiddush hagoyrol eino din shekiddush Hashem. Then certainly by the goats of the Yom Kippur, where the goyrol works, then the shem also should work. That's what you might have thought. Hagoyrel oisachatis ve'ein Hashem oisachatis. By the two goats of Yom Kippur, it's the goyrel that determines what the korban is going to, which one the korban is going to be, and not your words. Now this gives us now a new option. Before, Rav Chisda said you can declare something to be a korban either when you buy it or when you process it. Well, this is now a new thing. This goyrel, it's not when you bought it. It's not when you're processing it. Uktani dekava. Yet, so that seems to break this rule of Rav Chisda. Amar Rav Achi Kamar, we learn a different kavachomer. Ma b'malkam shaloi kiddush hagoyrel. By other korbanos, where the goyrel has no effect, afilu b'shas l'kicha. Even when you buy it, it doesn't make a difference. You do a goyrel all day, it doesn't do anything. And b'shas asiyah, yet kiddush Hashem b'shas l'kicha b'shas asiyah. Yet if you say when you buy it harezu shlomim, or when you do it harezu shlomim, it'll work. Malkam shekidish hagoyrel shelo b'shas l'kicha v'shlosh b'shas asiyah. Where on Yom Kippur, when the lottery worked, and it wasn't when you bought it, and it wasn't when you processed it, it's your words should be able to be makadosh as a chatas when you buy it or when you process it. So to disabuse yourself of that notion, the Torah wrote, Talmud Loimer v'aso chatas, hagoyrel oisa chatas, ve'ein Hashem oisa chatas. Period. Toshmal, I'll bring you another proof. Mitame migdash ani. You have a din that if you don't know that you're tame, and you walk into the base of Migdash, so you have to bring a korban. Now this korban is an oil of a yored korban. It's a sliding scale, which means it depends how much money you have. If you're wealthy, you bring an animal. If you're less wealthy, you bring a pair of birds. If you're less wealthy, you bring a mincha. So, metame migdash ani. So you have a poor person who was tummy, didn't know about it, went to the base of Migdash. So he knows he has to bring a korban. Well, he's an ani, so he can get away with birds. The hifrish mos lakino. And he separated money for the pair of birds. But in the meantime, before he processed the korban, hashir, he became wealthy. So the money that he had designated before, he separated and he said, well, I want this money to go for my chatas and this money for my oila, but he needs more money. So moisif umevi choivaso midmei chataso. So let's say he set aside new money for his chatas and his ola. He can take the money that he set aside from the previous delegation for his chatas, but he can't do it with the ola money. The hahacha here as well, the lav shas lekicha. It's not when he bought the animals. The lav shas asiyah. It's not when you're processing the animals. Uketoni dekava. And it seems that money that he's designating is designated. Amrav Sheshes, the Tizbra, is that so? Amrav Lazar, Amrav Shia. Mitame Migdish Oshir. Let's say a wealthy person wandered into the base of Migdish, he was Tame. Vehevi Korban Ani. Now, if he tries to bring a Korban Ani, just birds, lo yotza, because he's wealthy. Now, the kivin to lo yotza, heichi kava. So if he's not Yotze, then when were these korbanos koveya? Elamai s'cholamemar shekvar omer ma'aniyu. So he must have been poor at one point, then became wealthy. So perhaps when he separated the money for these korbanos, he designated already. Well, this will be for Nola, this will be for Chatas. And Rav Chisda would agree in that situation. Ula Rav Chagam, Rav Yoshia de Omar Yotza. But according to the other opinion, says that the guy is Yotze. How does it work? It's not b'shas lakicha. So lo teim of achar kach amar, ela aim of achar kach lo kach amar. He did it when he bought it. In a chanami, it fulfills what Rav Chisda said, that you can only be kovea either when you buy it or when you process it. Now, lakach mostly for maybe chavasu ma'niu. So how could it mean if he bought it already, now he can bring more? The parikle. So the Gemara says he redeemed it, the bird. How could he ain't pidyon la'oif? There is no redemption by an oif, because an oif, there's no mum by an oif. Redemption by korbanos only work because the korban gets a mum, then you can redeem it. So Amrav Papa gon shalokach freda achas. He didn't buy a pair of birds, he bought one bird. So how does it work? I ola zavan, and if at the time he bought it, he said it's an ola, so mostly for maybe chavosum it may chatoso. So then he can add that money to money that he set aside to buy a chatas. And the ola can be offered as a nadava, not a choiva. And he chatas zavan, if the one bird he bought was a chatas, so ein moisif for maybe chavosum it may also, he can't add oil money to that. And therefore, since he was mechaper through another korban, like we know before, a chatas shekipru ba'aleh with another korban has to go to be put to death. Gufa. If he was wealthy when he committed the avera, maybe korbanoni lo yotza. He has to bring a korban osher, not a korbanoni. Otherwise, he's not yotze. However, Rav Chagam Rabbi Shea Yotza. Meisvei. I'll ask you a question. Mitzoira oni. Mitzora also has to bring birds. And it depends on whether you're wealthy or not. Shehevi korban osher Yotza. So an oni who brings the wrong korban is Yotze. But osher shehevi korban oni lo Yotza. So how come here it doesn't work? In the other case it worked. And there's no argument with Rav Chagam. Oh, shiny awesome to receive Zois. Zois T.S. Toira Samitzoira. It's dafka this. And you can't switch it. But in the other case, you can switch it. Freit the Gemara Yachi Reisha Nami. So how come in the Reisha there was machloikas? Because Rabbi Rachman Toiras. The Toiras is a ribui. Made it more broad. And Vahatanya. And that's how we can prove it. Toiras, Larabas, Mitzrani, Shevi, Korban Osher, that it works. Yachal, Afil, Osher, Shevi, Korban Ani might also work. Talmud Omer, Zois says no. Freit the Gemara, V'nelef mi no. Why don't we learn from here to the other cases of two birds? So, Miat Rachmana v'im dalhu. It says if he's poor, only by Mitzorah you have that din, but by other cases you don't have the same din. Mishnah. By the way, we have everybody online. Tomorrow we're going to learn the Navi Shir at 8:30. And I'm teaching now 2 blot. I'm going to teach Membeis after we finish this blot. So that way we're on the target. Mishnah. Kosher Akain Loshen Shel Zohuris Barosh Sar Mishtalech. The Kohen. Yes, sir. Okay. Kosher Loshen Shel Zohuris Barosh Sar Mishtalech. Right now, up until now, right, we left off where the Kohen did the goyrol, and we now know which goat is going to be shechted LaShem, and which goat is going to be sent LaZazel. So the goat that was sent LaZazel, he tied a piece of red wool on the head of the head of the goat. And there was a gate that they would send that goat out to the midbar. So this goat is placed there by the gate. Vilanishchat keneged beishchitaso. To the goat that's going to be shechted, we'll see what this means. Does it mean he ties a red string to that one, or does he stand it next to the place where you're going to shecht it? We don't know. The Gemara will tell us. So that's what's happened so far. He ties a red string to the two goats. One is Lashem, one is Lazazel. He's already done a vidui on his cow. He goes back to the same cow. Balo Eitzel Parashnia for a second time. He's already done a vidui for himself personally. Now he does a second vidui. He leans on that animal umizvade, and he does a second vidui. V'kachaya oimer ano Hashem. That's the name of Hashem. Shem HaMeforish. Chatasi avisi uposhati lefanecha niu veisi uvnei Aaron am k'toishecha. So now he's asking kapara for all the kohanim. Ano Hashem. Again, he requests using the name of Hashem. Kaper na lavonis v'lapshoim v'lachatoim shavisi v'shaposhati v'shachotati lefanecha ani uveisi uvnei Aaron am k'toishecha kakasu b'toras Moshe avdecha ki vayom hazeh yichaper aleichem l'taher etchem mikol chatoseichem lifnei Hashem, which was said in the Shem HaMeforish Titaru. V'hein oinin achrav baruch Shem kvar malchuso lo olam veh. So right now, he's now done the second vidui. You see, each vidui has three mentionings of the Shem Hashem. He's going to have a third vidui for Klal Yisrael. So there's three viduis. Each one has three names of Hashem. And then when he took the goyrel out and he said Lashem, that was also Shem HaMeforish. So the Shem HaMeforish was uttered 10 times on Yom Kippur. Iboilahu. So we asked the following question. It says Vilanishchat, to the goat that was going to be shechted, is a kshira koi or a mother koi? Does it mean you just stand them there, or do you actually tie a red string to that goat as well? Toshma, Tani Rav Yosef, kosher l'shon shel zahuris b'rosh sar mishtaleach, v'mido keneged beishilucho. You tied the red string on the sar mishtaleach, and he stood there. Vilanishchat keneged beishchitos shlo yisariv zeh b'zeh. And you tied another red string so they shouldn't get mixed up. The lo yisariv fa'acherim, and it shouldn't get mixed up with other goats. Now, iyamit bishmak shira koi. If our Mishnah is saying you got to tie a red string to both of them, shapir. That way, we're going to be able to distinguish the goat that's going to be shechted from the goat from other goats. We're not going to mix it up with the goat of Mishtalech because they're standing in two different places. One is by where you sent out the Sar Mishtalech. The other is where you're going to shech the other one. Now, if it means you're going to stand it in a different place, fine. It won't get mixed up with the Sar Mishtalech, the high kotter bei, high loy kotter bei, because if it doesn't mean you tie a string to it, but it means you stand it somewhere that's not going to have a string. So the way you differentiate between the Sar Mishtalech and this Sar is because one will have a string, one won't have a string. But Biachrini mias miarev. But you could still mix up that goat with other goats. Elolav shmami no akshira koi. Shmami no, and that's the halacha that the Rambam paskins, that you tied a red string to both of the goats. Rav Yitzchak. Shtei l'shoinais shomati. I heard two dinim regarding these threads. Achas shel pora, because a pora aduma also, they used to use a thread. V'achas shel sar mishtaleach. Achas tzricha shir, v'achas ein tzricha shir. One requires a minimum amount, the other doesn't require a minimum amount. V'lo yadana hemina, we don't know which one is which. Rav Yosef, nechzi anan. Shel sar mishtaleach the boy chaluka. This sar mishtaleach had to be torn because when they brought it out to the cliff where they're going to throw it off, they broke the string, and one was tied to its horn, and the other was placed on a rock at the top of the cliff. Then they would push the goat off, and the red string that was tied to the rock would turn white. So because they had to divide the string, well, you can't, if there's no shear to a string, you won't be able to divide it. So clearly boy shear. V'shel par de lo boy chalukah lo boy shear. But the red string of the paraduma does not need any shear because you don't have to divide it. It needed weight because we're going to see you tied it around the hyssop and the other leaves that you had to bring to dissolve. So it needed weight. So it needed a shear. This, whether it needed weight, is machlekes tanoim. I'll give you another reason why it needed a shear, because the para required you to divide the string as well. Because Eitz ve'abaya, Ketzad u'oiseh korchan b'shiorei lashon. You took the wood, the cedar wood, and the azov, the hyssop that you have to burn with the para, and you have to tie it with this wool that was red. So one was used to tie, and one was used to burn without tying. So you see, you have to tear the string into two pieces. So ema biznav lashon. It's just a very tiny, not the whole part. So you can't learn that it needed a real chalukah. Eitz eres, the cedar wood, ushni tolas, and this wool string, shekolton shalheves, that if they got burned in the air, separate from where the goof of the para was burning, it's a kosher work. So meisvei nisfave valoshen, if this wool string got singed with an extra fire and it was not burned together with the ashes, then it's not good. Maybe loshen acher mekadesh. So it's a kasha on Rav. On Rabbi lo kasha kan bekoilachas, kan benichfefes. Depends if the flame sort of jumped out and it got burned far away from the other thing, then they would say there'd be a problem. But if it's a low flame and it's being burned close to the ashes, then that would work. It doesn't have to be mamish in the afer, but where the fire juts out to will make a difference whether it works or not. However, Rava Omer koivet tanoihi, whether or not this needs weight, machlokes tanoim de Tanya. Lama korchan, why do you have to tie the cedar wood? Kadeshi kulan baguda achas. It's like a lulav. It has to be tied together. Divrei Rebbe. Rabbi Shimon Omer, no. It has nothing to do with aguda. It's in order to give it weight. Kadeshi ben koivet v'yiplu toch sreifas apar, so it will easily fall into the burning ash of the paraduma. I heard three things about wool. There's a wool string that has to play a part in the mitzora process as well. Achas mishkal asor, is one weighs 10 zuz. Achas mishkal shnei sloim, which is 8 zuz. Achas mishkal shekel, which is 2 zuz. I don't know which is which. He also Rav in Pirsha Mishmei Rav Yoina's son. Mario, I'm not going to Membeis. 42.
Hold on.